Hey, this is Mark Henry, author of Dancing with Energy, Healing, Magic, and Mysticism. So, I'm just going to be talking a little bit today about the 5 lessons that I've learned from practicing magic. So, number 1. Emergency magic versus magic that is proactive. If you are behind 2 months' rent and your landlord is telling you that you need to pay today or he's going to evict you, that is not the best or ideal time to do magic. That is called emergency magic. It is what that is someone's waiting to the last minute. There's been a whole bunch of things that have happened to build up to this situation, and now what you're trying to do is to use magic to completely reverse all of that and get yourself on top. It's a little bit of a tall order, and most of the time it doesn't work from my experience. I'm much more of an advocate of proactive magic, which means that doing a little bit of magic of a particular theme consistently, regularly. For example, let's say we're going back to the example of the needing the money for rent. Well, if someone were to do a little bit of magic regularly and over a period of time, they probably could make more money, have it in their bank account, have a little bit of padding for unfortunate circumstances so that this issue wouldn't come up to begin with. So proactive magic is, I think, the way to go. I've noticed something, though, that the people who get into emergency magic are the people that have this interesting relationship to time, and they tend to be late for things. They tend to be sometimes the people who waited to 5 hours before the test, not getting any sleep in order to pass it, rather than somebody who would study a little bit, 3, 4, 5 days before the test in college. It may be a mental pattern. So if you find that in yourself, try to develop a habit of doing magic in a different way. So you don't have to worry about, something happening and you have to put a rush on it. Also, emergency magic is difficult because you're not in the best state of mind. At least most of the people aren't when there's an emergency. Those types of emergencies can bring up feelings of scarcity, of desperation, all of which can interfere with your magical efforts. So, again, emergency magic, just say no. I'm not to say that there aren't any specific spirits or whatever that you can go to. It's just, again, you can go to Saint Expedite, you can go into certain demons. Again, though, you're operating on their time at that point. You don't have any time to play with. So you're at their mercy. So it'll happen on their time, and it may be too late. So, number 2. Your magic, and this is a myth that I haven't heard in a while, but it just came to my attention, and that is, just because you're doing magic, it doesn't mean that it's going to positively affect people you're connected with. So it won't necessarily affect your lover, your close best friend. It won't affect relatives. Just because you have an emotional connection and maybe even a married kind of a legal social contract going, it won't affect them. Not unless during the time of you're doing the magic you include them in your visualizations or your petitions or whatever you're working. I can tell you from experience, especially past relationships, that I will do magic for me and the person that I'm with. Well, their life would, on their end, I guess, of the ledger of the accounting, they'd have a lot of problems. And while my life would go smoother, and isn't like that I'm so much better or different necessarily, it's that they weren't working their magic in which they were trained to make their lives better. They just weren't doing it. So you can definitely tell our lives were a little bit differently. And also, if you're in a relationship with something, you are part of a system. So if that person's, I guess if they're having financial problems, car problems, problems with relationships and X, Y, and Z, it does affect you. I think my advice would be that if you find yourself in that position, realize that your magic is affecting you, and that you could try to, I guess, get permission to kind of work on them and try to help them using your magical efforts. Next. Energy. We have, at least physically, we have a finite amount. Everything takes energy, physical, emotional, mental energy, and that also includes our magic. There is magic that you do for yourself, there's magic that you do for other people, but the more that you do, the more energy is taken away. So there isn't like there's an infinite amount of energy for you to access with that particular thing. If you're doing energy healing, you know, we're talking about Reiki or some of these other type of things where you're channeling universal energy. That's one thing. However, that doesn't encompass all of magic. So I've noticed, and you've probably noticed it too, is that you feel like a little bit of energy lost as a result of your magic. You may be connecting with the energy that is yourself. You may be connecting with another spirit to connect with the other spirit, or God or entity. You're taking on some of their essence. Not to mention the fact that magic in general will affect your psyche. So you can have all of the internal images in your head, feelings stir up. Your self-dialogue, the dialogue in your head will take on maybe a different turn. So as Hermetic thought says, you know, as above, so below. So we both influence and are influenced by other things. So that being said, make a long story short, take care of yourself when you're doing magic. Don't overextend yourself. And that goes with another lesson too. If you decide to be hired by somebody to do magic, be careful, because now you are running into what I've just said. You may be doing magic for yourself, and now you're doing magic for someone else. By doing magic for someone else, you are connecting to them, you're connecting to the situation, which affects you. So if you're especially a sensitive type of person, sensitive to energy, sensitive to spirit contact, all of that, you have to check in with yourself regularly and periodically to make sure that you're not going past, you know, what you're capable of doing to be successful. So, and that's kind of hard, especially if you're somebody who may be taking on work and you need maybe a little extra money. But I'll tell you that it's important to gauge what you can do and what you're capable of, how much energy you have before you take on extra work. And maybe as time goes on, with a little bit of practice, you can maybe expand that a little bit. However, I think that self-wisdom is some of the best wisdom that one can have. Lastly, number 5, and this may be obvious, but it's not so obvious as the saying goes. Sometimes common sense isn't so common. And that is, be careful who you talk to about your magic and your magical life. You may need people for networking, for people to be kind of associates, business contacts. If you're the type of person who just is very open about that, and that's fine. I've heard people say, I don't care what people think, and that's fine too. But from my perspective, you have to simply be careful, because you don't know about where you tell this person might tell someone else, and as a result of that, you gain a reputation. People make unfair judgments on others all the time, and that can happen to you very easily. There may be a situation where you may need an opportunity and that door will now be closed. So tell your most trusted friends, family, and loved ones about your magical efforts if you so desire, but be careful about telling every single person. In fact, that's the magician's axiom: to know to dare, to will, to keep silent. And there's some wisdom to that. And that's about it. Please subscribe and like. Check me out on Patreon. Put a link at the bottom. We're doing some really cool stuff. I have new videos up if you haven't been on my Patreon before. So, Mark Henry signing off. See you later.